Right on cue, he is Congressman Rich McCormick from the 7th District of Georgia. Congressman. Yes. I know you have a very, very busy day back up on Capitol Hill. You know, we're thankfully not too far from there, so appreciate you being here. Congressman, we've worked together in a couple different capacities when I was at AFP and otherwise, and I've always thought very highly of you, but I think a lot of folks in this room might not know a lot about you. Before we dive in to the issues and our principles, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to Congress, and your goals there.
So, good morning, good to see you guys, good afternoon. I'm Congressman Rich McCormick out of Georgia's 7th District. It used to be Newt Gingrich's district long ago. I was a Marine Corps pilot for about 16 years, also did some airborne time, so never trust a pilot who could jump. Then got my MBA somewhere along there, deployed to the Persian Gulf a couple times in the 90s, Africa, Korea several times. Was attached to Korean forces when I was airborne in the Army Forces 82nd, 101st, 10th Mountain. Then got this wild idea, I was supposed to go to JSOC, but I had a kid on the way and a 9-month-old, and those guys were deployed about 9 months out of the year right after 9/11, and ended up going to Georgia Tech and Morehouse to teach as a Marine officer instructor. That's where I did my pre-med. I got my MD from Morehouse School of Medicine, where I just did the commencement speech, a very controversial commencement speech this last weekend. And why was it controversial? Now, I was student body president at an HBCU, so don't judge me by my color. I was elected by my peers after 3 years there, and I used to be popular. People used to like physicians and Marines, but then all of a sudden politics gets put in there into play, and all of a sudden people who were your friends before, and realize when I ran for office after, and by the way, I went back in the Marine Corps, well, in the Navy, as a doctor on a Marine Corps base, Camp Lejeune. Did my last deployment in emergency medicine as the head of ER in Kandahar, Afghanistan in 2016, retired in 2017. Came back, was working private practice, got mad one day and went down to the Capitol with a bunch of docs on Surprise Building, got mad at my own party, ran for office just because I was mad at the person who was doing some things I thought were very jaded. I thought we were the good guys. And what do you know, I won, and the rest is history. And just for a little context, when I ran, I lost my first general, but I won my first primary by, I think it was an 11-way race, we won by 40% against a former mayor and state senator who had $1 million, and every mayor endorsed her. And that was based on hard work, great team, a great messaging, and a great resume. When we got reapportioned, we were more favorable. Actually went against a Trump-endorsed candidate whose dad was best friends with Newt Gingrich. It was his seat, his old seat. And who was also the ambassador to Luxembourg for Trump. So I was endorsed against by Gingrich, Pompeo, President Trump, Hannity, Maslap, CPAC, Bob Barr, etc. And we won 2-1. Once again, how do you do that? Relationships are a big part of that. Messaging is a big part of that. Anybody ever read the book, The Conservative Heart by Arthur Brooks? I'm a big believer in a big church mentality. I'm a very conservative guy. And like I said, everybody loves you until you get into politics, and all of a sudden half of America hates you almost instantly. And I'm a guy who never went to one political meeting in my life. But there's this idea that we can't be far-right conservative and still be inviting. That all of a sudden we're inviting people to the Bible study by calling them idiots, and we're trying to convert them by punching them in the face. It doesn't work. In my district, I'm probably one of the more conservative people in Congress. We outperformed President Trump by 8 points in the last election. Herschel Walker by 14 points the election before that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, when side-by-side comparison, 16 points. So what you say matters. And we've had the best results in Georgia for a reason, not because our legislatively we're very conservative, but we want people to come. If you disagree with me, I'm never going to win an argument with you, right? Anybody married? You don't win arguments. It just doesn't happen. And people who try to, these internet warriors who are trying to convince people they're wrong by calling them idiots, says, I'm factual, I know more about you, this than you. You'll never see, nobody gets on the internet and says, oh, you're right, I'm an idiot. Thank you. Thank you for helping me understand that. And I keep on telling the youngsters, Instead of trying to win an argument, win a friend. And you'll be far more influential. Prove that you love someone rather than prove someone's wrong. And they'll eventually be like, oh, they care more about me than being right. Then you have influence. And so that's been my philosophy, that and small government, because I don't believe in government, I believe in the people. And I think that's why AFP and I get along very well, and that's why your movement is very important to growing the church. If we don't grow and allow people to come in that aren't perfect, allow people to become more like us because we're not punching them in the face because we love them, and we'll grow this party and it'll be more like the Reagan movement that really won the day. And by the way, I'm a firm believer we have to work with President Trump on all these things, and I want to have one team, one fight. I don't badmouth anybody because that will never pass a bill. I don't badmouth anybody because that will never grow our party. So that's my overall philosophy.
What does it mean to you to be a conservative?
I believe in the people. I believe the ultimate minority is the individual. I believe that government can be weaponized against you, not just legally, but also as it regulates and taxes you into oblivion. I believe that a conservative gives power back to the people. Representative government, I think we're out of balance. I think executive power is too prominent for the last 4 presidencies. We need to get back in balance. We need a more representative government. I remember people like Marcus Aurelius, when we had a republic. When one person becomes too powerful, and once again, that's why I believe in the Reigns Act, I believe in balance of power, you don't want things to change too rapidly. It's bad for business. Who can do a business plan if you don't know how things are going to be next year? I believe that we have to move slowly, even when it's in the right direction, because people have to adapt. Because if you move too quickly in the right direction, you can also move very quickly in the wrong direction. And one of the greatest things is so frustrating. I came into government realizing it would be frustratingly slow. But that's exactly how we design our government. What's the most efficient government in the world? A monarchy, a theocracy, a dictatorship? One person calls all the shots, and it's great when your party or your person's in power, and then it's horrible when you're not. And this goes back to biblical times. We have a very ineffective and inefficient government on purpose, so it would never become more powerful than the people. And every time it becomes powerful, bad things happen. The Affordable Care Act is a great example of when you have a supermajority, things move too quickly, the biggest, most expensive bill of all time, and look at the catastrophe it's left. The most expensive part of our government and our entire ecosystem it takes up $5.4 trillion a year out of our economy. $1 trillion of which is wasted. That's because we have a government that acted too dramatically.
Absolutely. You touched on this a little bit, but one of the things I've always appreciated about you, about what you do back home in Georgia, is how much you reach out to sort of non-traditional communities who, especially for a red state, deep South, Republican Congress, you don't really expect that. Because a lot of times, a lot of districts, it's not really that necessary, right? A heavily R district. You are in kind of a deep Republican district, but you still do a lot of that kind of outreach. What are some examples of that, and why do you see value in it in the seat that you're in?
First of all, America is becoming increasingly diverse. Anybody who ignores that is not understanding what America is. Some of that, I think, was forced. Some of that is irresponsible, but a lot of it's just by natural growth. Georgia is one, I think, of 9 states now that's majority minority. My district is about 40% minorities. Now, mine's kind of, it's not traditional. It's got about 14% Indian diaspora. It's got about 5% Korean. It's got a lot of African American, Hispanic. I mean, it's a very diverse minority population. So, yes, I appeal to those folks and who they are, but if you look at Georgia, it's 1/3 African American and 50% minorities of all kinds. This day where you can be just a good old boy and appeal to people is over. And that's probably actually healthy because America is very much a mixing pot. And I think, my hope, I mean, you look at our party, the Republican Party was born out of the abolition movement. And then we kind of lost our messaging somewhere along the way. I mean, if you look at all the major advancements for colored people, it all came out of the Republican Party. And now we've lost that moniker, we've lost the messaging, and sometimes, quite frankly, we come across as non-compassionate people that don't have a balanced immigration approach, that we don't, because we forget what's good for America. What's good for America is business. As Coolidge said 100 years ago, this guy was a great economist. He said the business of America is business. So everything we do, whether it be taxation, regulation, immigration, every ecosystem has to evolve around what benefits you as business owners, because that's what provides job and upward mobility. And that's what produces a lifestyle. That's what makes America great. Cheap, affordable energy, less regulation, less taxation, more growth. Our immigration system should be right-sized to that. A legal immigration system, not illegal. And so we can have, we know who's here, we know who's being taxed, we know how they're going to develop and what their background is. That's really important. But my approach to this has always been from an economic model, because when you have good economy, you have no terrorism, you have no crime, you have a great living standard. That's what makes America great.
So you've touched on Georgia a little bit. It has very quickly become the most interesting and arguably the most competitive state in the entire country. What can we learn about both the recent successes and recent failures of the right in Georgia over the last few years?
I go back to what I was just saying. You look at Governor Kemp. He barely beat Stacey Abrams the first time. Running as a deep Southerner, had the shotgun, and yeah, I said that. And then when he ran for re-election, he won in a landslide because he was a great governor. He did decrease regulation, decrease taxation, kept the government open, and kept the federal government from shutting us down during COVID. He was the first governor to open up the economy. Extremely popular governor. He went through all kinds of controversy, but he became more and more popular. Contrast that to our Senate seats, which we've lost the last 3 elections, and we may very well lose this next one against Ossoff, because once again, you can look at a guy like Ossoff. Now, I disagree with his voting record vehemently. I think he's a far leftist, but the guy's engaged. His constituent services are off the chain. He's at everything. When he sees me in the airport, he walks up and says, "Hey, Rich, how are your boys? What can I work with you together?" That's retail politics. That's being engaged. That's being a good messenger. People tend to forget about your legislative efforts when you're that kind of politician. That's why we have to be holistic in our approach to politics. We have to be no stone unturned. That's when I say when we outperformed everybody in Georgia in our district, we literally had 5% more voter participation than any other district, which means usually there's a lot of contentious seats, which means it's usually a narrow margin of victory. We're supposed to win by 13, we won by 30. So what's our magic? Once again, constituent services, making sure that people feel paid attention to. People, it doesn't matter if you call me Democrat or Republican, I'm going to help you, and then I'm going to proselytize why the conservative message matters to you. And you remember how Reagan used to paint a picture? And he wasn't making it political. Now, he would joke. He could insult you by telling a joke, and you'd laugh along with him because you didn't even realize you just got made fun of. It was charming. And it got to the point he would paint a picture and be like, yes, that's what I want. And you didn't realize you're agreeing with conservative principles. And there are certain things, there are certain demographics that are natural conservatives that vote Democrat because the messaging has not been on point. And that's why books like Conservative Heart are really important books to read because, and matter of fact, I was just talking with my staff on the way over here. Did you read the book yet? Read the book. Well, there's going to be push-ups because we have to get that messaging down. I can give you all the money in the world. It's not going to make you happy. I'm an ER doc. I can give you things all day long, but people who come into the ER with depression, anxiety, suicidality, drug and alcohol abuse all have one thing in common. They're self-absorbed. Sitting at home and getting free things does not make you happy. Working for something and having value add from what you feel your importance to society is what gives you happiness, and that's what that book is about. Happiness does not come from handouts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Dr. Brooks wrote a lot about the dignity of earned success, which I found so compelling, and is something that we can kind of take for granted what that means to an individual when we talk about jobs numbers and GDP, and I think you're spot on. But turn to Congress for a second. Knowing that governing is messy and it's complicated and involves politics and coalitions and a lot of other factors beyond the perfect ideas, and you're in a room full of people whose job it is to create the perfect ideas and turn them into the perfect policies, how do you advance your vision of conservatism in Congress? And by that I mean, what does it look like to be effective, short of passing a good bill or repealing a bad one? What does progress for your vision of conservatism look like in the halls of Congress?
So there's 3 big challenges in America right now. We have debt, which is going to be a massive problem into the future. You have healthcare, which is a big part of the debt and also a big part of the expense. And education. Education is a great equalizer for all people. Inside, you said besides legislation, I'm going to start with legislation. So if you're going to be top 10 in legislative efforts, which you're going to be a Republican now because we're in the party of the majority, first of all, pick your fights. There's people who are now no longer in Congress who are the most famous people in Congress. They're not going to be here next year. Marjorie Taylor Greene, out. Jasmine Crockett, out. Dan Crenshaw, out. Wesley Hunt, out. The list goes on. I mean, Nancy Mace's going to be out. You're going to have a bunch of people who are very famous, raised a ton of money, and they're going to be out. And why is that? And were they effective legislators? How much legislation did they effectively pass that actually made a difference in America? First thing is, we pick what our legislative efforts are going to be centered around. Does it unite the party? If it doesn't unite the party, I mean, your messaging, fine. You can raise money off it, you can maybe win an election off it, but it's not going to change America. What's going to change America? And is it incremental change, which is probably the most easy thing to pass? You know, do one little thing that maybe you can get either bipartisanship or get a majority here and get it past the Senate, which, by the way, if you pass in the House but you don't get 60 votes in the Senate, what's the point? How do you get it passed? Being cerebral about this is really important. Making sure that you realize that just passing the House doesn't get you a law, doesn't change America. Do you want to change America, or do you just want to protect what you have? That's the choice you have in everything you do. The next thing is growing the party. Growing the party is exceedingly important. You can see that in an average midterm, the ruling party loses about 20 seats. Right now we're doing reapportionment. There's a big fight, and I think the left is way off base on the fights they're picking. And so it's not going to be as easy as normal for them. But it's still going to be tough for us. And they're literally openly talking about stacking the court and changing states, getting rid of the filibuster. That should be frightening to people because they can transform the future of America permanently to the point where we become another Europe with regulation and taxation. It can happen very, very quickly. Even though we have a $30 trillion economy, that can go away almost instantaneously. And let me give you a couple of insider tips. It's not inside information, so I'm not going to get in trouble. But predictably, Medicare and Social Security will go bankrupt in the next presidency. Doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. When that happens, what do you think is going to happen to our borrowing rate? It's going to go up. We're going to be probably close to $50 trillion in debt. That means a debt servicing of about $2 trillion per year, just paying the interest on your credit card. $2 trillion a year. That's bigger than most of the economies in the world. And that's going to essentially bankrupt our currency at that point. How can we've been downgraded twice in the last couple of years as a currency. BRICS is on the rise, whether we like it or not. You got a standard coin out there. You have competition for the American green dollar, the petrodollar being the industry standard of trade. That will affect our economy in dramatic ways. So be prepared for that, because we've not handled business. It's a bipartisan problem. Whoever the president is this next presidency, one-termer. I predict that now.
So you have a book coming out later this year. I don't want to give away too much. I don't know how much you want to give away, but as a little microcosm, it's very relevant to our cause of freedom, conservatism, and our kind of shared principles. And you kind of alluded to this. Many conservatives in this room and across the country, they're aghast at what they see from the left. But what do you advise in your book, and what do you advise to the people in this room and even to your constituents back in Georgia about jettisoning your principles in order to defeat the threats of the left versus holding firm to your principles in order for them to succeed in the long run? How do you advise people to think about that problem in the face of a threat like the progressive left that we see today?
So this is about marketing. My MBA was focused on marketing because I believe that if you can't sell your idea, it doesn't matter. You got to. Elon Musk once said to my president, first time I ever met Elon Musk, somebody asked him, "What's your next big idea?" And he said, "I got a million ideas. I can't go to sleep at night because I have so many ideas." Before he's even political, he didn't own X. He wasn't a business. He was just a business guy. He said, "But the question is not what my idea is. What can I actually execute? What can I see to fruition?" That's a profound statement. Same thing with my efforts in Congress and everything else I do. Why waste my time on things that are just motion? Motion versus progress. That's what we say my candidacy. And I think when we talk about the book, it's going to call In Pursuit of Happiness, which is what gives you value, what gives you happiness. Kind of like the conservative heart, but it goes the next step. It's very, very solid on individual things that cause a difference in people's lives. How do you solve the healthcare conundrum without being so dramatic that you lose the votes and you can't actually pass it? How do you empower people to be successful? Because the other book I'm going to write, which will be right behind it, is going to be a little more quirky and funny. It's called I Wish It Sucked More. And the reason is because we always say in the military, embrace the suck. And there's a few different kinds of people. There's the aviators who they look outside and it's raining real hard. They're like, man, it looks like it sucks down there. And then you have the guy who's got the coffee underneath the tent. He's looking at all the rain out there. He's like, man, it looks like it sucks out there. And then you have the infantry guy in the water, shivering. He's got an M16. He's like, man, it sucks down here. And then you got the one guy coming out of the water, he's got the K-bar in his mouth, he's looking around like this, and he's almost buried up to his neck, and he goes, I wish it sucked more. What's your attitude in life? How do you empower people to embrace even failure? How do you get them into the fight? How do you get them to take a chance, to take a swing? The average entrepreneur fails multiple times before they're big. How do you get them to believe in a system that supports taking chances? You learn way more from your failures than your success. How do we create this society of people that aren't just comfortable? The most comfortable society in the world is communism, right? The government's going to take care of you. Go to work, I got to do my job, go home, you drone on. Or do you go for it? See where this world takes you. Encourage your kids to take chances and to be bold, knowing that they're going to be successful if they keep on trying. Believe in the system, believe in capitalism, believe that America is the greatest country in the world and that you're not being kept back. That's a message. And that's what I'm trying to reinforce. And whatever I do is like believe in what made us the nation, the greatest nation that ever existed in the history of mankind. And preach it. And give examples.
How do you think about that challenge on the right? I mean, you've alluded to this a little bit. People have genuinely become concerned about real problems, right? A lot of these are real problems that people on the right are concerned about, driven by the left, or driven by social media, or Hollywood, or academia, and they're concerned that our principles, as timeless as they are, may not be up to the challenge of modern-day problems. What do you tell either your colleagues in Congress or voters in your district who might say, we need to, frankly, just become more like the left and use the power of government to punish our enemy, reward our friends, and do that rather than worrying about our principles?
So there is a movement inside the right to become isolationists, for example. It's funny, the very same people say, why would you do communism? Why would you do socialism? It's never worked. Neither has isolationism. Pay attention to history. Look at what happened. China was the first country to circumnavigate the world about 1421, before Magellan. The maps, they say that the maps that Magellan used probably came from the Chinese. They had more wealth, economy, trade, technology than all the other countries in the world combined in the 15th century. And they became isolationists and became obscure. They became nothing. Now they're trying to reestablish their dominance, not just in the Far East, but worldwide. The more isolationist we become, the more we will suffer a consequence. If you look at how we go forward and what our messaging is and what works for America, reclaiming our title, making sure that when people say, oh yeah, do this, oh, that's what Europe's doing. And right now they're falling behind in technologies. They're not going to be relevant to AI. They're going to be behind in energy. Everything's more expensive there, whether it be their source of energy. Oh, I'm worried about global warming. Okay, me too. But let's actually look at the science behind that. Not just what people want you to hear so they can sell their solar panels or whatever they want. Let's actually look behind the science and peek behind the curtain, actually know what works, because there's a lot of science out there I wasn't aware of until I started looking at it. By the way, written by Democrats that actually support my point of view. Be well-rounded. Know your science. Know what the statistics are. I could bore you guys all day long with the minutia of geospace and everything else that has to do with the atmosphere. But ultimately, know your stuff. Now, once again, you're not going to win an argument. But if you can say, hey, I care about the environment too. Let's talk about that. I care about people too. What's going to benefit you down the road? Owning that and making sure that you're coming from their perspective of what they care about, because our system works for everybody. It's not about me. It's about us. And that's how you sell anything in marketing, right? Hey, nobody cares if a doctor makes money. Doctors make too much money, right? But if I make it about the patient, then I don't put a doctor into a hospital system and an insurance company system that costs you 100% more in your premiums, and he makes 30% less. Now, he's not the bad guy anymore. Who's the bad guy? The insurance companies, the hospital systems, the people who are monopolizing that $5.4 trillion economy that I just talked about, that you're paying for, both out of pocket and in your taxes. Make it about the right thing, and you'll sell your product seamlessly.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up here, you're, in many ways, actually executing the policy making of the ideas that many people in this room have worked on quietly for years, even when it kind of seemed like we were rowing upstream and it wasn't going anywhere. What advice or closing words would you have to freedom conservatives in this room who do the ideas that you put into action on Capitol Hill? What words of encouragement or advice do you have for folks here?
Invest in the message. Make sure that it's one team, one fight. We need the Senate. We need the House. We need the President. And I tell you what, when the President put 6 points out for his new healthcare plan, feedback. Let's meet. Let's talk. It's going to be top-down driven. The President has the bully pulpit. Make sure that when you see something wrong, you don't just rage against the machine and use the media to get your clicks, but that you're actually working behind the scenes to smooth it over and make sure we're combined in our efforts. As a matter of fact, you can win over some Democrats that way too, believe it or not. There's reasonable people out there everywhere. You just got to find them. Your influence is based on you. If you can unite in a voice, and then not hard sell, not jam it down people's throats, but actually come from a compassionate direction, then people will be much more willing to change incrementally, as we said before. The Democrats have been outpointing us when it comes to making small changes, and we keep on drifting. We swing for the fences, we don't get it, we stay right where we're at. Let's get those incremental changes. Don't let the good be the enemy of great, even though I want great. And I'll preach for great, but let's get what we can get and own it. And keep advancing and keep on growing as a party. But you're not going to grow if you're only looking for perfect people to be in our party. And you're not going to grow if inside the church you're divided. And you can see the people who are successful versus very unsuccessful based on that principle alone. We have to be united. And once again, I can be way more conservative than you. It's okay. If everybody in your church agrees with everything the minister says, you're in a cult. That's not a good thing. We are America. We are supposed to be fiercely independent. And it's okay to be on the same team and have some disagreements. The only way I'm going to change your mind is by looking you in the eye and say, I care about what you care about too. Let's talk about that.
Congressman, when does the book come out?
Good question. This is my first book I read, so I'm really going through that process right now. I mean, maybe somebody give me some advice, but we've written it, and I'm editing it right now, and I'm trying to write another book simultaneously. I'm so excited. Of course, I have so much time on my hands, so I'm just trying to come up with something else to do. But I'm working hard. Well, hopefully within a year.
Awesome. Dr. McCormick, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Congressman.